Hello, people of the internet. I am back. I'm Antoinette van Graan, and today we are doing How to Win Friends and Influence People. Or, more accurately, or at least what it felt like to me, how to make people like you and manipulate people. This is that very famous book that my dad had on his bookshelf for years and years, and I was never really interested. It seemed like a really loser move to read a book on how to make friends, because that implies that there's a problem. But then I read a statistic somewhere that this was the book that was most read by psychopaths and sociopaths and like serial killers and people. When they did interviews, they found out that this was the book that was common among them. All of them read this book. So that piqued my interest. And I borrowed the book from my dad and I read it. And it was weird. It seemed very manipulative and insincere. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, this is the classic type of self-help type of book. It's quite famous and, as I said, a bestseller across the board. So let's talk about the voice here and the overall feeling I get from the book. It does seem very insincere and a little bit manipulative. At the beginning, it seems like, okay, that's an interesting idea. Okay, interesting. And then as you go along, the pattern starts to form that every time the author tells you this is a good idea and you should do this, the reason is because look at this story where I tricked someone out of their money using this. So, because all of the motives, none of the motives seemed pure to me. All of the motives were like, get that sale, get that job, do that deal. And it started to make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. So this book is 3 stars for me. Once again, not bad. Just, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody unless you're interested, because it's terrifying in a way. If this was the book that psychopaths and sociopaths read to try to relate to us normal humans, it really makes me uncomfortable. I really felt uncomfortable while reading it because I've never been good at figuring out manipulation. I've never been one to try to manipulate people, and every time I've been manipulated and one of my friends tells me, yeah, this is what happened to you, they manipulated you in this way, I'm mind blown. My brain doesn't work like that. And if you stick around till the end of the video, I'll tell you a couple of, I guess, anecdotes about how I just never see manipulation when it's coming. So reading this made me really uncomfortable in my guts because it's something I'm not accustomed to, and it's a way of thinking that it doesn't sit right with me. So the book overall is about techniques for handling people, dealing with difficult and tough situations, tough discussions, dealing with conflict, and a lot of social rules about how to win friends and influence people. And I think it's kind of indicative of the feeling of this book that it says win friends. You don't make friends. It's not a relationship. You're winning them. You are beating the social game and winning a friend. The friend is the prize, because every single story he wants something out of this friend. He doesn't just want to make friends. So yeah, I think it's clear that there are a lot of things that made me uncomfortable or that I just straight up disagreed with. So I'm going to, spoiler section incoming, I'm going to go through a couple of the things that I disagree with. I used my top 3 and I'm going to discuss the 3 points of advice that this book suggests that I completely disagree with, or that doesn't sit right with me, or that I wouldn't advise any of the people in my life to follow these rules. So let's get into it. My first point of disagreement here would be the idea that you should always apologize profusely at the slightest hint that something might have been your fault. It sounds nice. It sounds like humility is always the way to go to avoid drama. It sounds like you're sacrificing your ego for the good of the relationship. But the problem with this is, especially in situations where it's kind of foggy, nobody is exactly sure what exactly is going on. But if you come right out the gate, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, the issue is not that your ego gets in the way, or that people feel good about themselves because you've apologized and now we can move towards a solution together. The problem is that sometimes from the first time and sometimes after a couple of times, if you are always the one apologizing and to avoid drama, and it's always the other person's side of the story that gets the limelight because you're just saying sorry for what you've done wrong in this situation, it's not that you come off as the victim, but you come off as the perpetrator constantly. Now, everybody who doesn't know the other side of the story, or sometimes people who do know the other side of the story, get to say, oh, look at Antoinette. Yeah, you remember last time she had to say sorry too? She's always doing this. She's always getting things wrong. And that's not a situation you want to be in, because then you have to retrospectively go and defend yourself for all the things that you just apologized to for the sake of avoiding an argument. And I just see long term this really not working out in your favor. Apologize when you are wrong. Be honest when you are wrong, when you apologize. But don't apologize if you weren't wrong. And don't apologize without explaining or just trying to justify yourself if there is a justification to be had. Every story has two sides, and if people keep hearing the side where you are the perpetrator, where you have done everything wrong, that will be the only way they know you. They will know you as the one that always needs to apologize because they're always wrong. The next point of disagreement is a mantra that is kind of repeated over and over and over. Like at the end of each chapter, there's like a section that just repeats again. Be lavish in your praise. And I'm not saying that if you have appreciated something about someone and you want to praise them, not to be lavish in that praise. But if this is a universal rule that you are always going to praise everybody and you're always going to be super lavish and extravagant about that praise, people tend to notice. It's like that guy who flirts with everybody. If he flirts with you, you don't feel special. It's just who he is. And I think, yeah, if everybody's special, no one is. And over time, if people start to see you're praising everybody equally lavishly, well, was my thing not that special then? I think people will see through this very, very quickly. On the other hand, if you don't praise everyone equally, but you only praise those people who you want to impress the most, aka the people you want something from, people will also see through that very quickly. People will start to see that you're only nice and you're only lavish in your praise when you want something. And I might not be good at manipulation, but even I can see like this is something that's going to get you in trouble and is going to make people distrust you from the get-go. So this is one of the mantras that like at the beginning sounded like a good idea, and then the more it goes over and over and over again, it doesn't seem like it would work. And then my last point of disagreement is sort of not on a specific piece of advice that the book gives, but overall. This book very much teaches you how to be likable. And I think I'll use narratives or stories overall to give sort of an example of what I mean here. So you get likable characters. They're bland, they have a couple of good qualities that everybody can agree with, and everybody likes them. But nobody loves them. So if I can use the story analogy then, if you have a character that has a really strong personality, a really powerful presence, you're gonna evoke two reactions. You're gonna get people who love this character to bits, respect that strong personality, and are going all in for it. Or you're gonna have people who just don't like it. It's a bit too much. And that means that a strong personality is either loved or hated, or fondly liked and disliked. And I'd rather have that. I'd rather have the strong personality than the likable personality. And if you employ all of these tactics and you always lavish in your praise and you love everybody, and you think everybody's stories are super interesting, and you think everything everybody does is super cool, like, yeah, people are bound to like you, at least for a while, but they won't really know you. People will like you for the techniques that you're employing. They will like you because you make them feel good. But will they like you for you? Will they even know you? You don't get to justify yourself. You don't get to defend yourself. You don't get to talk about yourself, because people like talking about themselves. So talk about them. Does anybody really know you? Does anybody really get to know you and like you? So I'd rather have integrity. I'd rather have a handful of close friends who love me, for everything, for the strong personality, than having a million people who are really fond of me, but that don't really know the real me. So that's kind of my issue with the insincerity in the book. It's just, you can use all of these techniques, but it's not like the love languages book where you can employ it to fit your situation. This is very, do this across all people, across all situations, this will work for you. But it's enforcing a personality that, although likable, will definitely in some cases be false, will just be a lie. And I can't stand behind that. I can't live my life like that. And I don't think it's a good route to happiness. Yeah. So maybe this book is a good idea for a social media personality. I mean, you want everybody to like you, right? Especially if you're like one of those big brands. Do all the things the book says. Nobody's really going to get to know you, but there's no real personality behind that. It's just the face. And I think it'll be a good face, and a lot of people will like you very much. But for your personal relationships, those long-lasting bonds that you kind of need in your life, those people who will be with you, you need to be real with them. If these cupcakes weren't that great, then they weren't that great. You know how they say a true friend is the one that will tell you if you have something stuck in your teeth? Yeah, I think if you want to win friends and influence people, you're not going to have friends like that. You're going to have friends that make you feel good. But it's a very superficial good. And I don't like. Okay. So to kind of contrast my complete lack of understanding of this particular social skill, I'll call it, I would like to tell you a story. It's about one of my friends who, when I mentioned this book to her and I mentioned how deeply uncomfortable it made me feel, she told me that she'd always had a knack for it, that it was a skill that she kept in her back pocket in case. And that it was something that she purposefully didn't employ in her long-term relationships because she knew that it wasn't real, and she didn't want to taint those relationships with something like this. But one afternoon I saw it working. Me and her had discussed previously a disagreement with the way something was being run, and we were part of it, but the leadership we just had some suggestions, and we went to them, and they did not take it well. And I have been in situations before where things like this have gone badly. So I tried to step out, like, I'm sorry, okay, it's cool, we're out. But she started talking more, and her attitude changed a bit. She became much more apologetic, much softer, much sweeter, and she kept over explaining herself, but in a way that every time she explained herself again, she twisted it just a little bit more. That after the third, fourth explanation, this was not what we had said at all anymore. And in the span of 15, maybe 20 minutes, they had changed. And I saw them changing with each iteration of this explanation. And at the end, they were apologizing to us and telling us that they were really sorry and that we actually are all in complete agreement, and they're so glad we came and spoke to them about this. And I am pretty sure I just stood there like a Venus flytrap. Like, I could not believe what I was seeing. This was legit some black magic. And I said as much to her when we left. Like, what the hell just happened? How did you, it didn't make sense to me. And she told me, yeah, she saw that the situation was going badly, that they didn't want to listen. So she had to fix it. So she's sorry that it took a little bit longer than we had planned, but she had to fix it, and she had to have them not be mad at us. And I was just like, yeah, I saw, but how? And she kind of explained to me a little bit, but I just don't get this stuff. And it's obviously useful, but I don't know. I would like to believe that people are always kind of honest when they speak. I know that isn't always the case, but this wasn't even blatant lies. It was just twists, twists, twists that all of a sudden meant something completely different. I don't want to think like that. It makes me uncomfortable. It really does. It really did seem like some black magic to me. Like she'd cast some spell over them to make them change their minds. Because it really is to make people think the way you would like them to. And to turn them to your way of thinking, and it just doesn't work for me. So that's probably why this book didn't work for me. And it's a useful skill. If you use it for good, like my friend did, there would have been no benefit with the leadership there being angry with us. And we did try to help. It was all good intentions all the way. But I can definitely see this being used for less good intentions by people with less pure motives. It's scary. It's scary that there are people with these type of skills out there. But it just seems like such a faraway threat. It's kind of like a lot of countries have nuclear bombs. I know we could be blown up at any moment, but I'd rather not think of it. You know? So, I guess that's why this book really didn't work for me. I don't want to think about people thinking like that. I don't want to think about people being able to climb into somebody else's mind and just twist around in there. It makes me uncomfortable, and I really don't like it. So, yeah, that was how to win friends and influence people, or how to be likable and get people to do what you want them to do. Same thing, I guess. Yeah.